Be great.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch event for Daughters of a Dead Empire by Carolyn Tara O'Neill. We are so excited to share this book with you and hear from both Carolyn and her conversation partner, Amanda McCrina. Oh, my video got blurry for a second. Oh, hello, all the people in the chat. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for talking. Um, before we start, I do want to go over a few rules. To introduce myself, I'm Laura. I'm the events coordinator here at the Astoria Bookshop. If you don't know who we are because you stumbled upon us somehow with the internet or you're friends of Carolyn or Amanda, we are a general interest bookstore in Astoria, Queens, and we are amazing. That's all you need to know. Before we get started, I want to go through a few housekeeping things. You will have the opportunity to ask questions during the last 10 minutes. There is a button down there that says ask a question, and you can vote on other people's questions if there's something you see that someone asked that you really want answered, so we don't have to duplicate a bunch of questions. Other than that, all we really ask is that you keep things respectful. Do not say anything that you would not want your boss or your mom to see you saying. That is my general rule of thumb. And last but not least, there is a button at the bottom to buy a copy of the book. Right there, it's a little green button. And you should if you haven't already, because, God, cover alone, worth buying. And yeah, the outfits are great. I noticed you guys have a little bit of flair. And yeah, with that, I'm going to hand it off. Oh, before I do that, let's go over the bios because I want to properly introduce you to our authors. Carolyn Tara O'Neill grew up in a tiny New York City apartment filled with thousands of books. Sounds like a dream. Every Friday, she went to the public library for even more reading material. She's lived in France, Spain, and Japan before circling back to New York. Carolyn now lives in a slightly smaller NYC apartment with slightly fewer books and still goes to the library every week. Daughters of a Dead Empire is her first book. Yay! And Amanda McCrina was homeschooled through high school and graduated from the University of West Georgia with a BA in History and Political Science. For 3 years, she taught high school, English, and government at an international school in Madrid, Spain, and is now a bookseller in Franklin, Tennessee. She is the author of Traitor and the Blood Oath duology. All right. And with that, I will hand it off to you guys.
All right, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be able to host this, and I'm so excited to do it for a book that I loved so much. I've read Daughters of a Dead Empire twice now, and loved it each time and learned from it each time. And I think from the events of the past few days, I think we can all see that we still have so much to learn from history in this part of the world. And I just want to say really quickly that we stand with the people of Ukraine and with the citizens of Belarus and Russia who are bravely putting their lives on the line to resist Putin's regime and the invasion, and our hearts are with them. But I'm so excited to be able to talk to Carolyn about this book. And I guess we'll just get right into it. This is a book about the Anastasia myth. And I think we all kind of grew up knowing the story of Anastasia. Even if that's the only thing we know about Russian history, we kind of hear that story. So Carolyn, why is that myth so appealing to us? Why is it still so pervasive? Why do we love the Anastasia story so much?
Thank you, Amanda. Love that question. I obviously love talking about the Anastasia legend. It's no secret to anybody here, I'm sure, that Daughters of a Dead Empire is an Anastasia story. Before I answer, I do want to back up just a little bit, and thank you for your opening comments, Amanda, about the ongoing attacks that are happening in the Ukraine. I want to echo what you said about our hearts just being with the people of Ukraine right now, and our gratitude and respect for all of the people in Russia who are risking their lives to protest and are opposing this war. both of our, your books, Amanda, and my book have a lot of similarities in terms of dealing with settings that are set during war, set during times of conflict, dealing with people on opposing sides. And of course, yours are set in the Ukraine and Poland during a period of during World War II. Mine is set in Russia. So I do think it's important to just acknowledge what's happening right now. So thank you for starting us off that way. And all of that said, I do want to answer your question and get into some of the more fun, we're here to celebrate tonight. So get into some of the more fun aspects of the history. So you asked why Anastasia is such an enduring legend. And it is, of course, I think a lot of people of our generation, we saw the Disney movie when we were kids. But you alluded to this too. I think a lot of people don't really know the actual history of Anastasia, right? But that said, I think it endures just, first because it's royalty, right? Anything to do with royalty is going to have an appeal to glamour, an appeal to just the excitement of royalty. It's a lost princess, a girl discovering she's a princess, heir to an empire. So it's all very glamorous in that sense. And of course, the Russian Empire and the life that Anastasia lived, she and her siblings were, when Tsar Nicholas was in power, they were the richest children in the world, quite literally, right? So there's all of this glamour and glitz behind the legend. But there's also, I think that whenever I see an Anastasia retelling, it always is dealing with themes of family, of longing for family, of losing family, of valuing family, and often deals with grief as well. And so I think those themes come up again and again in tales that are either playing on the Anastasia legend or dealing with Anastasia herself. Certainly, and I think that's part of the appeal, right? And that definitely those themes come to play in Daughters of the Dead Empire.
I think, yeah, there's definitely universal themes, I think, to be found in the Anastasia story, which I agree is part of what makes it feel relevant, even when we can't really, we haven't experienced what it was like, obviously, to live as Anastasia lived. And I think you're probably going to get into this later, just the immense wealth that her family had. But you're right that there are so many elements in her story that still speak to us today. So a little more technical, what was your writing process like for this book? How long did it take you? What was your process?
Well, I started writing this book in 2014, so it's been a while that I've been working on it. I am a big believer, for any writers in the audience, I know there are many, I'm a big believer in writing routines. I figured out my writing routine while working on this book. So over the past several years that I had been working on it and other manuscripts in the meantime, I have dedicated every Sunday. I go to a cafe near my house and I write, and that is what I do every single Sunday. And all of my friends and my family know that I will never make plans with them on Sundays, because that is what I do. So it takes the thinking and the planning out of it. It's the same thing every week, and I can squeeze in a bunch of hours of writing consistently, which really helps move it forward. So I wrote it, I wrote the first draft in 2014, 2015. I revised it a bunch. I queried it, didn't get any responses, didn't get any feedback. I then joined Author Mentor Match, where I met my amazing mentor, J. Albert Mann, the author of Fix and The Degenerates, and several other young adult novels as well. And she really helped me just revise and really reconsider the novel and just turn it into something that was much stronger. So then a year later, I queried again and found my agent, Andrea, which was great. But Amanda, I'd love to turn the question back to you. Do you have a writing routine? What is your writing process?
I am terribly undisciplined as a writer. So I love that you have this routine that you do every week and you can keep up with that consistently, because I don't, and I wish I did, because I hear that so much, that's what you need to be doing as a writer, is developing a consistent routine. And maybe it would make me be an amazingly faster writer if I did have a routine, but I write in the morning sometimes, and I write in the night sometimes, and I don't write every day. And then, then there's a stretch for 2 weeks where I am writing every day, and it's not consistent. But so far, it's worked for me. So
yeah, I think that speaks to just how completely different it is for every individual writer. Like
Yep.
you have pantsers and plotters, and people who write every day, and people who don't. I think that just that's proof. The proof is in the pudding. You've written books, so
there's nothing prescriptive I can say about writing. If it works for you, that's great. If it works for me, that's what I'll keep doing. But yeah, there's no one right way to write. All right, so talk a little bit about your research process. How did you research? Where did you turn to for research?
Well, let me start, and I prepared for this question because I always get asked about research. I got into this topic because in 2013 I picked up this wonderful book, A People's Tragedy by Anastasia Myth. That's a history of the Russian Revolution with an emphasis on like comparing the impact of the events on everyday people. So studying like how everything that was happening on a grand scale impacted people on an everyday scale. So I started reading this book, and that just got me obsessed with the time period and the Russian Revolution and the Russian Civil War. And so what I did was spend the next couple of years just reading everything I could get my hands on before I even knew that I was writing this book. So I started with a good foundational background in the time period. And using that, I then went and wrote the whole thing. And I didn't stop to research and ask questions. I would just make notes of things that I knew I would need to double check. And then I powered through and wrote the whole draft. And then over the years, as I revised the drafts, I went back and edited and did all the specific granular research to double check the things I was including and add a lot of actual detail. And then I also, I contacted some authenticity readers, historians who could help me, answer a lot of questions, illuminate a lot about the time period. I know that you worked on Trader for many, many years. I'm curious how your research process was similar or different.
Similar in that I had an interest in this history outside of this specific story, I would say. So as you were saying, you just had an interest in this history from this book, and you kind of developed the groundwork, and then you were able to have enough background to be able to write this story. I would say it was similar for me with Trader in that I got passionate about this history in high school and then in college. And really, I say it took me 10 years to write the book, but most of that was just, researching, not for this specific story, but just reading up on the background of the history of this area and these people. And so, specific time working on Trader was not 10 years, but I did try to, build up a background for many years, even before I started attempting this story. But if I can just ask, I was really intrigued by what you said. So sensitivity readers and authenticity readers, what kind of reads did you have done? Do you recommend that for other authors of historicals?
Yeah. So I would say it was a couple of different styles of reads. So one was just historians or history students who specialized in that time period in that region and could give me that lens and talk about this really wouldn't have happened for another year, or this really wasn't common at the time. And then I also contacted, so I'm not Russian. I don't have Russian background. And so I was very conscious of writing in a culture that I did not have the cultural context for in order to understand and catch the kinds of things that I really wanted to make sure got caught and didn't end up the kinds of mistakes that might otherwise end up in the final manuscript. So I also contacted a couple of folks of Russian background who could just read with an eye towards culture and read towards things that felt authentic to them, felt plausible and consistent with their understanding of history and their own background. So I did both, and I 1000% recommend that whether if you're writing in a culture that's not your own, or even if you're not, you might want to use some authenticity readers. I just think it's an interesting experience, and it is extremely valuable. And then for anybody writing historicals, if you're not talking to people you're missing way too much. Like, you're not going to get where you want to get unless you're talking to people who have background and familiarity with the time period.
For sure. I'm seeing some people in the comments saying that they're having audio issues. Are you able to hear us at all? Is there...
Oh no, just with me.
Oh no.
Well, they did. I'm muffled. They did tell me to get a headset. So, all right, give me a minute. I'm gonna track down earphones. That's what I can do.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Sorry about that to our audience as well.
Of course, my earphones are all nice and painful, so I'm gonna work on that. It wouldn't be a live stream without tech issues, ain't that the truth? All right, can anybody hear me at all with this?
I can hear you, and you sound good to me.
Sound better.
Everybody's
okay.
saying it sounds good so far. Okay, let's keep it rolling then.
Okay, sorry
Okay.
about that, guys.
No worries. All right, so you were talking about research and getting sensitivity reads, authenticity reads, and I definitely recommend that as well. I had several reads done for Trader, for sure, because again, I mean, I have Polish background in my family, but again, I'm American, and I wanted to be sure that I was representing this culture with respect and with authenticity.
Yes.
But with that in mind, how do you go about balancing, oh, I need to be 100% accurate. I need to be accurate because this is real history that affects real people. How do you go about balancing that with making your story accessible to readers, or even like legible to readers?
Oh, this question is so important to me, and such a big one. And I also kind of feel like my perspective might be a little different from yours on this, Amanda's, because I've seen you talk about this before, so I'd love to hear your thoughts too. But for me, accessibility was, for this novel, paramount. Like, I really wanted, as I said before, I think that, you know, we all know Anastasia, but I think if you were to pull like 10 American high schoolers into a room and ask them, like, why did Anastasia's family die? Like, who was her father? I feel like 9 out of 10 of them could not tell you. I certainly couldn't. I never studied the Russian Revolution in school. I never studied the Russian Civil War in school. So all of this was new territory to me. And I was very conscious of that while I was revising this. Part of me really wanted to like pique the interest of young people in this time period and like get them curious and get them excited to explore this time period more. So accessibility, obviously accuracy matters. And I'll be honest, for me, again, maybe a bad historical writer on my part, but I only really cared about accuracy as a form of cultural respect. For me, the reason why I kept pushed and pushed to try to improve the accuracy of this novel over time was, I would say, 99.9% because I wanted to make sure I was respecting Russian culture and not inadvertently putting things in this book that would be offensive or play into stereotypes. And so much of the work that I was doing around research, I mean, partly just like adding full life to the setting, but also because I really wanted to make sure that I was treating the culture respectfully because it's not mine. And so, okay, sorry, that was a bit of a digression, but so, wait, what was the question again? You can tell how nervous I am.
No, don't stress. You're doing great.
Accessibility.
Yes.
Thank you, Amanda. So accessibility. So really, even though I did a lot of work to try and make it authentic, I always emphasized accessibility in my approach to it. And I would even say, and again, this is where I think probably I differ from you. There were times when I privileged accessibility over accuracy. And so, and the biggest example of that in the novel, I think, is the White Army. So, during the Russian Civil War, you had the Red Army, which was the Bolsheviks, and then you had everybody fighting against them in the White Army. And in reality, the White Army was not an army. It was like multiple different fighting forces that were totally independent of one another, competing on different fronts. Some of them were, monarchists, few of them, but some of them were capitalists, some of them were communists. Some of them were, they wanted a democratic government. So huge diversity of actors in what was sort of lumped together in my book under like the White Army. Really for the purposes of simplifying a little bit and not scaring off young readers, and especially from the history. So striking that balance is incredibly hard, but that's sort of where I landed. But I'm curious what you think about this.
No, thank you for saying that, because that was the one thing I think I had to kind of fudge the most with Traitor and The Silent Unseen as well, is that when you're talking about warfare in this part of the world, in Eastern Europe, in Russia, in the 20th century, there's never just two sides. There's so many different groups involved. There's so many different acronyms you've got to keep track of. And that was the hardest thing, I think, for me, because as I was writing about these different groups fighting, it's like no reader is ever going to track with this. No reader is ever going to like keep track of who's on what side. And for me, that was part of the point, is this is confusing, and it's even more confusing when you're a teenager trying to navigate it. But thank you for bringing that up, that this was not a monolithic White Army versus Red Army. You had so many different people involved. I loved that you included the Czech Legion in Daughters of a Dead Empire. Because again, you never learn that in an American history class, that even if you learn about the Russian Civil War, you didn't learn that there were Czechs involved. You didn't learn that, communists are actually fighting the Bolsheviks as well. You didn't learn that kind of detail. So thank you for the care that you took to show that in your novel.
Thank you.
Yeah. So having said that we don't really get a good grasp of this history in our history classes in the US especially. We have a lot of, I think, misconceptions about the history of the Russian Revolution as Americans. We have our own ideas of who were the good guys and who were the bad guys. What were some of our misconceptions maybe that you wanted to correct or to inform more? We have a lot of stereotypes about this history that we have. What were some of those that you were trying to kind of give us a bigger picture of, I guess?
Well, I'll say a couple of things. And one of them is sort of what I was just saying around like introducing Americans to this, young Americans to this history, because I think a lot of, like you were saying, like we don't really study this very much in school. So I really wanted to sort of illuminate and fill out our, American understanding of the history, right? I think that, and going back to your first question, there is a lot of glamour and romancing of the Anastasia legend and the Romanov family. There's, I would call it a fandom, frankly. There is a Romanov fandom, of people who just, like myself, who geek out over the history and just, love to debate the personalities and digging into the diaries of the different family members. And just, it's a subject that captures a lot of interest. But I think sometimes when folks deal with the Anastasia legend or the family legend, I think sometimes people said, with all due respect, and I say that because, the Romanovs to some people are holy figures at this point, are considered religious martyrs in respect. So I acknowledge that is that these are people who have great importance to a lot of folks. I also want to acknowledge the history of how they ruled and how they lived when they were in power, despite the tragedy of their deaths, right? So, when Tsar Nicholas was in power, when he was ruling, this was a man who believed in autocracy, believed that he had a God-given right to rule, believed that his God-given right to rule meant that he should not have to take the advice of ministers, should not have to deal with elected officials, he did not worry terribly about the rights of his people, educating his people. He was a ruler who dealt quite violently with suppressing dissent, suppressing protest in the country. And so this is a side of the history that I wanted to bring out, which is why the book is dual POV. So one of the main characters, as you know perfectly well, is Anastasia, but for the folks in the audience, the other character is a peasant girl named Evgenia, who is a communist and whose family suffered tremendously under the empire. Whose father essentially starved to death under imperial rule because of the poverty, the immense poverty that they were left to languish in. And so I really wanted to introduce this other perspective to the story and dig into why this family was overthrown, what was really happening at the time, what were the actual things that were impacting the people who lived at the time, and not just deal with the romance of the legend.
I think you did such an incredible job with the nuance of this history because, again, as you said, it's so tricky when you're dealing with historical figures who are so important, even religiously and culturally. But you did such a good job, I think, of talking about why the revolution happened, the grievances people had over the way they were being treated, the way their Tsar was ruling over them. And I think, have such a retrospective idea because we know what happened. We know what happened under Stalin. We know what happened under Soviet rule. And I think, approach the revolution with that mindset of, oh, this is a bad thing that happened to the people. But I think you do such a good job in the novel of bringing up the hope that people had when this revolution happened, the optimism that they had for their future because the Tsar had been overthrown. And I think it's so difficult for us to grasp that, again, because we know what happened under Soviet rule in 20 years down the road with the purges and starvation in Ukraine and all these things that happened under Soviet rule. But you did such a great job of showing us what common people, everyday people, peasants would have felt. I think this optimism for their future, that was something that stood out to me. Can you tell us what are some Easter eggs in the book, some hidden secrets in the book?
Easter eggs. There are definitely Easter eggs.
Okay.
So the first one is actually going back to like Romanov fandom, right? So anybody who reads this book who has a background in the Romanov family history is definitely going, like, the reveal that she's Anastasia doesn't happen until like a little ways into the book. So you'll see some names dropped. You'll see the hints that I'm giving, like she's referencing Alyosha and she's referencing Brother Grigory. And if anybody wants to share who those people are in the comments, I'm curious if anybody can. I'm sure there are folks who can. But like Brother Grigory and Alyosha and and the Standard, and she's referencing like places that were parts of Romanov family, the Romanov family experience. So that was fun. I like to mix those in. And then there were like Easter eggs that were like for me or my family. So you mentioned that there are Czech soldiers who play a role in this story. Yes, Brother Grigory Rasputin, and Alyosha was Anastasia's sickly little brother, sadly. Yes, indeed. There were Easter eggs. Oh, right. So my grandfather is Czech, and I named the Czech officer who plays a major role in the story and has a little bit of a romance going on with one of the girls. His name is Jiří Valčar, which is my grandfather's name. So that was fun. That was sort of a family Easter egg. And then, Allie, if you're still on the call, there was an Easter egg that only one person in the entire world would ever get. And it has to do with how the girls climb a tree, sort of midway through the novel. So there's an Easter egg that it's in there that's like, one person in the world will mean something to. So I really enjoyed doing that. Do you have Easter eggs in your books?
I do, but mostly they're references to like other movies or books that I love. Honestly, there's a reference to Mary Poppins in The Silent Unseen, and I'm very curious if anybody can find it. But so yeah, I have a few like silly little Easter eggs, which is terrible because my books are very grim and serious, but also there's these silly little Easter eggs in there to like movies that I like. So
you got to do that. You got to
Yeah.
you got to lighten it up as a writer for yourself.
All right,
Go
ahead. No.
Just I need to look for that Mary Poppins. I don't
Yes,
remember.
let me know if you can find the Mary Poppins reference. Okay, so I'm excited about this next question. What are the challenges of writing dual POV when you've got two different characters, especially two different characters that are on different sides? How do you do that? Do you like doing that? Tell us about that.
And I would love to hear your answer on that as well. That's another similarity between our books, right? We've got these dual POV narratives between people who are really just foes from the start. So I have to say, for this novel, it felt necessary. Like I said, it was Anastasia who really brought me into this particular plot. But I wasn't interested in telling that story without the perspective of a peasant girl who was living a more ordinary existence under the Tsar's rule and could provide this counterweight to Anastasia's very biased perspective of what the world was like under her father. So it felt necessary to me for this book. And I have to say it was a challenge. So what I will say is, like, one of the girls was way easier for me to write than the other. And Evgenia was way easier, like by 1,000 miles. Evgenia was like, I'm more similar to her, just so much. She came so much more naturally to me than Anna or Anastasia. And Anastasia is like my polar opposite, the way that I write her in the book. She is just this outgoing, clever, very funny and goofy by nature. I mean, I'm a little goofy, but a real clown. She's like the family wag. And she's just brilliant, very intelligent, very strategic, very controlled and intentional in everything she does. And she's just so unlike me that it took me, I'm going to say, like 10 drafts at least before I felt like I had connected to her and felt her. And the funny thing is, like, I don't know, in reading some of the reviews, people seem to like Anna better. So I don't know. I don't know what that's about.
Interesting.
But, Evgenia was way easier. So I had to do that too. I had to sort of find my way to both of them independently. What about for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Same dynamic. I like to work with characters who are on opposing sides, and yet you can sympathize with both of them, which I think you definitely accomplish for sure. And at the same time, I can see how that was a challenge, because I think it's more natural for me to have been drawn to Evgenia because, again, we can relate more to her. I can understand her frustrations, whereas Anna is coming from such wealth and such privilege that it's hard even to relate to her. So I definitely get that. I will say with both of my dual POV novels, with Traitor and The Silent Unseen, there was a character that just came out easier, that flowed easier for me. And if you're curious, it was Alexei in Traitor. Definitely was much easier to write than Tolya. And
really?
And honestly, I struggled a lot with Marya and The Silent Unseen. She was difficult for me, and Kostya was so much easier for some reason.
Because he's the sweetest person in the world.
I love the grumpy character who's secretly sweet and gooey on the inside, and he's definitely that kind of character. So,
but I'm so surprised because Tolya was sort of the original character for Traitor, wasn't he? Like,
he was, but he's so shut off. I think just emotionally closed off, that it was hard to even get a feel for him. So this was his story, but it was so hard even to get a feel for him because he's just emotionally kind of shut off. He's been through so much trauma. And so just narrative voice Alexei was so much easier to get a feel for. So
Interesting.
But I think that dual POV, like you said, is such a good way to get at characters who have different feelings, different views, and yet through the dual POV, because we're in their head, we can sympathize with both of them, and it makes for such a more engaging story, I think. And you definitely accomplished that with Anna and Evgenia, because we sympathize with both of them, and yet they're on opposing sides. So what do you do with that? It's a really unique dynamic.
I agree. It's a nice way to help neutralize the authorial voice and sort of allow the reader to decide for themselves how they feel about an issue.
For sure. All right, so I'm gonna wrap things up because we got something fun planned, I think, in the next 10 minutes or so. Yes. So the last question I'm going to ask you is, what are you currently reading, or what is a book you would like to recommend to us?
Okay, so I am currently reading a book that just came out. It is incredible, which I knew it was going to be. So it's called Mirror Girls by Kelly Mcwilliams. She wrote Agnes at the End of the World, which came out a couple of years ago. This is brilliant. It's about a pair of biracial twins in I forget the year, but 1953, who are separated at birth and have to reunite in the South when their grandmother dies. One of the girls has been passing as white her whole life. The other girl has been who's darker skinned, has been living with their grandmother in the North. And so it's about them coming back together in a haunted Southern town as a curse falls upon their family. So freaking good. Couldn't recommend it enough.
That's amazing. I'm always looking for more books set in that era. So I'm going to have to pick that one up. And someone commented, yes, it does kind of have that Vanishing Half sort of vibe, it sounds like. Alrighty. So, Carolyn, you're going to take this part away, I think. And
yes,
we're going to play a trivia game, I think, is what we're going to do. So.
Yeah, we wanted to do something a little fun and interactive with the folks on the call. So everybody, we're going to do a Kahoot game, and there will be a nice prize at the end for the winner. So we're going to ask a few questions about Romanov and Russian history and also young adult literature. So grab your phones, get your phones ready. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to test you guys. Please let this work. Okay. All right. So you should be seeing my screen. Okay, start. Can folks see my screen? Amanda, can you?
I can see it. It's kind of small, but I can see it. Yeah, there we go. Hey, that's better. That works.
Good. Okay. All right. So what's happening now, get your phones out, and there's going to be a link, or you can use the whatever this is, the QR code to join on your phones. So you can either use the QR code or go to www.kahoot.it and enter this game pin, and then stick in your name. And we're going to see how much you guys know about Anastasia and a little bit of Russian history. And you can see your names popping up. Jasminda, hello. Popping up on the screen. And okay, so Amanda and I are going to switch off a little bit. If you can see the screen, Amanda, reading the questions.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we're good.
All right. The questions are going to go very quickly. Very quickly. So you got to be ready on your phones. Just a fair warning to everybody. And there are going to be 7 questions altogether. All right, I do want to give folks just a minute to join, because I know fumbling for your phone can be sometimes a panicky experience. Okay.
I think you can play on a laptop as well. I noticed someone said their phone battery died. I think you can play from a desktop or laptop as well, if I recall correctly.
Give it a shot. Yeah, just go to kahoot.it. All right, so I think that's about as many as we're going to get, because nobody's joined for a little bit. So last chance, and I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Okay. Daughters of a Dead Empire trivia madness. Here we go. First question. What year did the Russian Revolution take place? Was it 1916, 1917, 1918, or 1919? People move faster. You gotta go faster. Okay, so 3 people got it right. It was 1917. There were 2 Russian revolutions, or we think about it sometimes that way. February 1917, there was a women's march in St. Petersburg on International Women's Day that lasts for days and grows and results in the overthrow of Tsar Nicholas and his abdication. Later that year, October 1917, what is generally in the West considered a coup, the Bolsheviks seized power from the provisional government that was in place. When they seize power, the Civil War begins shortly thereafter. So all of those events happened in the very eventful 1917. Even though my book is set in 1918, so sorry if I tripped you guys up that way. Okay, Amanda's going to read our next question. Oh, scoreboard. Okay, we have an anonymous player who's kicking some butt. Okay. And Shan coming in second. All right, let's see. Oh, Amanda, can you see it?
I can't see the question. Oh, here we go. Okay, well, what was the name of Anastasia's eldest sister?
Let's see. Okay, 3 people guessed Tatiana. Interesting. Her eldest sister was Olga. Tatiana was the second sister. Maria was the third sister. Alexandra was their mother, and Olga was the eldest sister. And Olga and Tatiana together were known as the big pair, and Maria and Anastasia together were known as the little pair. That's how they referred to one another. Okay, Amanda, let's see if you can take the next question as well.
Okay.
Oh, scoreboard. All right. Okay, that was a trickier one. Fewer people got that one right. Okay.
Oh, is there any way to move the screen? Apparently it's blocking one of the answers for people.
Oh, what year did the animated Anastasia movie come out? Okay, hopefully people could see that on their phone. You know, I can't I can't really see what you guys are seeing, unfortunately. This knows. Okay. Oh dear. Okay. So the question was, what year did the animated Anastasia Disney movie come out? And it was 1997. Okay. So
we can just read what's on the yellow square for people.
Okay.
If that's
okay.
You know what?
Let me just, maybe I should just read the questions. Because
do that.
I think,
and I'm actually going to go grab a charger because my laptop is about to die. So.
All right. I think I see the questions before you guys do anyway. So, okay. All right. We got some right answers on that one. 1997. Jasminda jumping up. Jillian as well. Okay. What is the name of Amanda McCrina's second novel coming April 5th? Is it The Silent Unseen, Traitor, The Reckless Kind, or The Hunger Between Us? And you've got... So the name of Amanda McCrina's second novel. Oh, we got all the answers in. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. Almost everybody got this one right. The Silent Unseen is correct. Coming April 5th. All right.
All right. I'm back.
Great. I don't know if you heard the last question.
I did. I was like, oh, it's the reference to me.
People generally got it right. So that's a good sign.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Tricky one. Which of the following was not a candidate to succeed Lenin as chairman of the Bolshevik Party after his death in 1924? Was it Kamenev, Stalin, Kollontai, or Trotsky? Oh, we're getting some answers. Not a candidate to succeed Lenin. Okay, we've got a little bit of a spread here. So a few people said Trotsky, but actually he really was. He and Stalin competed quite hotly for that role. And of course, a few decades later, Stalin would track him down in Mexico and kill him, unfortunately. Kollontai, the answer is Alexandra Kollontai, who was one of the 2 female, leaders in the Bolshevik Party at the time, but she was certainly not high up enough to compete for for chairman role. There are fireworks going on outside my window, so if you guys are getting background noise, apologies. Okay, Jasminda is killing it with a streak. 3 correct answers in a row. Way to go, Jess. And Shan is hot on her tail. Okay, and Kelly is bringing in with third. All right, let's see. Question 6. Which of the following novels is not set in Russia? Open Fire, The Witch and the Tsar, Blood Like Magic, or Castle of Concrete? Which of them is not set in Russia? Okay, most people got this right. Blood Like Magic came out last year. It is a YA novel. It's amazing, by Lizelle Sambury, set in modern day or near future Toronto. Open Fire is an amazing book set in 1917, Russia. The Witch and the Tsar comes out later this year. Olesia Salnikova, am I getting her name right, Amanda?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Witch and the Tsar comes out later this year. And Castle of Concrete, Katya Reina published that a few years ago. So those are set in Russia. All right, we're going to get to the last question. All right, Kelly's on a streak. She's coming in hot on Jess's tail. All right. Which of the following is a common nickname for Anastasia? Be fast. Sasha, Shvibzik, Anya, or Nastya? Which of these is a common nickname for Anastasia? Okay, got a little bit of a spread here. This one might have been tricky. So Nastya is the correct answer. Most people chose Nastya. That is a common nickname for Anastasia. Shvibzik was the real life Anastasia's nickname from her family. It means like mischievous imp, basically, but not a common nickname for
That was
the
kind
name.
of a trick question there, Carolyn.
I know. I'm not sorry. It was a little tricky. And the others are Anya is just not a nickname for Anastasia, despite my use of it, the movie's use of it, etc. All right, so let's see who our winners are. So in third place, oh, Jasminda came in third. Jillian came in second, and our first place winner was Kelly. Okay, so Kelly, congratulations. Alicia and our anonymous person were runners up. Kelly, you have won a $15 gift card to Astoria Bookshop and a Daughters of a Dead Empire swag pack. So like bookmarks and book plates. So you can reach me on Twitter or shoot me or through my website, carolyntaraoneal.com. Get in touch with me, Kelly, and I'll get you your prize. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Ooh, boy, that's scary. Can I stop sharing? That says close video. We don't want that.
Don't want to do that.
That is unfortunately the only button that is currently available to me.
Oh no.
Oh boy. All right. So, shoot. Hey, Laura.
Hi. Hi, I'm trying to help you out here. You know
okay,
what?
so
I will do this. There we go.
amazing. Thank you so much.
Yes, that was fun. I'm a little bitter. It turns out I don't know anything, but that's fine.
This is why you read Carolyn's book.
I know. Next time I will crush it. Anyway,
Yes.
Speaking of which, we have some audience questions, which I'm really excited about because I took a peek at them and they are great questions. If you want, anyone who's watching, you can still get in questions. Just press the Ask a Question button and we will read it out and hopefully answer it. It seems like we should have time. But anyway, let's get on with the first question from Nicole. Carolyn, congratulations. Will you continue to write historical fiction in the future? And do you have a dream genre or category you'd like to tackle one day?
Oh, wow. I genuinely did not think I was going to continue writing historical fiction after this novel. I thought I might shift to something very different, like maybe mysteries or science fiction. But I do find myself drawn. I think what happened is that as I was working on this novel, I fell in love with history. And I never I wasn't really into history when I was a student in school, so I didn't expect that. But it turns out like it's really won me over. And I just keep getting drawn back to it. So I think I might continue with some more historicals. In terms of dream genre, I would like to write middle grade at some point. So, which is not a genre, I guess, but you get what I mean. I would like to write middle grade at some point. For now, though, YA keeps pulling me back, so we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, we have a history teacher in here. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I recently got really into royal history because I've been listening to this podcast called Noble Blood. And I didn't think I'd ever be compelled by that. I didn't understand anything about the monarchy, and now I have like the entire Tudor family line memorized. So, yes, Noble Blood shout out in the chat.
That's amazing.
And yes, there is. And how
there?
I think King George could have saved him potentially, speculatively.
Quite easily, in fact.
Yes.
He very much could have saved him. Oh.
Well, all right. So next question is, how did you eventually quote unquote, get to the character you struggled with? In other words, if you needed 10 drafts to really connect with them, how did you eventually find your way in?
I mean, to a certain extent, it was attrition, right? It was just spending so much time with her that I just eventually one day, it clicked. Oh, but you know what? I'm actually remembering the exact time that it clicked for me. And like I said, it was very late in the process. So my book is coming out now. This was in 2020. So when we were all locked up in our homes, in our apartments, and the world was getting very grim around us. And in particular, as the protests around George Floyd's killing were spreading across the nation, it was very much the rage and the rage that I was feeling at that time that allowed me to connect to Anastasia and what she was feeling in the wake of, what my character was feeling in the wake of losing her family. So it was very much just what was going on around me that sort of sparked this connection to her that started with that rage and that sort of allowed me in.
Yeah, that's an intense process to have. Also, Amanda, if you want to jump in and also kind of have any opinions from a writer's perspective, you are welcome to. Let's see. And this last question that we have is, congratulations. What's a main message you hope young adults take from your novel?
Okay, I'm going to say first that I don't like to be didactic when I write. So I don't intentionally write trying to make a point. Like that's just tends not to be my process. I don't go in with a message. It tends to come from the characters. Like they sort of tell me the message. But what Anna and Evgenia told me was essentially, the importance of empathy, the importance of listening and connecting with and opening your mind to people who believe very different things from you. And of course, Amanda, this is all over your books as well, is sort of this, this openness of one character towards listening to the pain that lies behind people's political beliefs, behind their, the way they see the world, and sort of empathizing with that before leaping to, hating them, essentially. So I think that really has come out as like the big message of Daughters of a Dead Empire. I didn't go in with that in mind, but what about you, Amanda? What about with, I don't know, with either book?
No, I'm the same way. I, as a reader, I tend to get frustrated when it's obvious the author is trying to teach me a lesson, a moral lesson, So I never start with a theme in mind. It just, as the story comes together, maybe a theme emerges. But I will say, and I've said this before, so Carolyn, you've probably heard this before, but one of my favorite sources that I worked with when I was writing my books, which take place in what is now Ukraine, was then Poland, and is about brutal, bloody conflict between Poles and Ukrainians during World War II. One of my favorite sources to work with was a collection of firsthand accounts and stories of Ukrainians who sheltered Polish people during a time when the Ukrainian kind of insurgent group was massacring Poles. And these were Ukrainians who stood up and like sheltered their Polish neighbors from the massacres, and often paid for it with their lives. And I just, that collection of stories has stuck with me and is one of the biggest influences on what I was writing. And it just reminds me that these people did exist, you know, even during this time that Carolyn's writing about, when there was such bitter class hatred, even so many grievances. And the time period when I'm writing about, when there's so much ethnic conflict going on over these lands that have been fought over, oftentimes for centuries, there were people who showed compassion to their enemies. There were people who stood up and did the right thing, and I wanted to honor them. And that's, you know, that's what my books are about. So,
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's really beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think history and literature both have that in common. I think there's a through line of empathy and the being able to see the complexity of the inner lives of people we wouldn't take time to understand otherwise. So I think that's what's really powerful about both literature and history. And that is all that we have for questions. So do you guys have any final words, or am I good to sign us off?
I will just say thanks to everybody for coming. Here's a beautiful book.
it is a beautiful book. Yes.
And Amanda, thank you so much for this conversation. I always love talking with you.
You're welcome. This was great. Thank you so much, Caroline. It's an amazing book, and you all should definitely get a copy as soon as you can.
Right down there tonight.
Yep.
Do it.
Yes. Click that green button. Yeah.
And yeah, thank you everyone for coming by. You should be able to find this uploaded if you want to rewatch it or show it to someone on our YouTube channel tomorrow. And yeah, buy the book, support wonderful authors, particularly the ones that we feature. And I'm not biased. And yeah, thank you so much for taking time and asking wonderful questions. And thank you to Carolyn and Amanda for taking time to be so thoughtful. All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night, everybody.